Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're joining us from. We are here to reveal the solution to CTF Challenge 24. This is actually a really interesting one, a really cool technique that I wasn't aware of. So I'm really excited to share this with you guys. And as a reminder, this is part of Wizer Secure Code Training. So we offer CTFs for developers beyond our training where people can basically test their hacking skills and get into that hacker mindset. So with that said, Itzik, why don't you take us through the challenge, explain, let's start with, what the what is the hacking challenge that people need
Absolutely,
to
absolutely.
yeah, solve?
So in this hacking challenge, very similar to a hacking challenge we had, number 13, there is a system that saves and restores or retrieves the company logo. So you are required in this hacking challenge to get the list of CRM users from an internal network API, which is usually not exposed to you. So what do we have here in terms of code? We have two endpoints. The first endpoint, the bottom here, sets the company logo. You need to provide company ID as a UUID and then a URL. And then it's being stored into a file. The URL is being, or actually the file is being stored here. Okay. And then what happens when you retrieve the logo, okay, you give it a company ID and the system will retrieve the logo from that URL. Okay. So this was on 13, it was sensitive to SSRF. So the developer actually fixed it. The developer said, okay, people actually directed to localhost. So let's create a valid URL, method to validate it and remove all the abilities to point to a local host. Local host, everything that starts with 127.0, and was pretty thorough in actually, removing that. So I challenge you to try to point to local host, but you won't be able to do it this way.
Cool. So what's the solution?
Great question, Gabby. So the solution here is actually pretty simple. Hackers know about it. We developers don't necessarily know about it, but there are certain domains that resolve as localhost. This one is included. There's many, many like this. This URL is actually resolves as a localhost. So what ends up happening at runtime, this translates as if I would say localhost here. It wouldn't be captured by the valid URL method, and hence when I run it, it will save into, as a company logo URL or image URL. Okay. And then if I go to retrieve it now with the same ID, boom, I get the CRM users because I tricked the system to actually perform the SSRF request for me.
So what happened basically is, for sure, this is really cool. And again, this is some of the things that it's creative, and you know, why would developers know about it, right? It's not like something they're doing on a regular basis. Like you wouldn't think about. Usually, the problem is the things you don't know. You don't know. That's
Exactly.
the biggest issue. If you know you don't know it, you're gonna check. But if you don't know that you don't know it, which is about 90% of the things, you're not even gonna go there and try to check. So basically, what's going on here, if I understand correctly, you are saving a logo that includes a URL that seems to be outside, but it's actually localhost, and you're basically running a command on the machine because you're running it as localhost. So that's pretty cool.
Exactly. Exactly. We're tricking the system. It's called DNS Rebind. We're tricking the system to not find that it's localhost, but actually running it on localhost.
Cool. So take us through the takeaways and what can we learn from this?
Absolutely. So as always, we have the write-up, walks you through the solution and so forth. But in this hacking challenge, the main takeaways are pretty important actually. One what we talked about already is that URLs are complicated and tricky objects. Not enough to break it down by ourselves and try to understand all the different angles of URLs. In this case, DNS Rebind is not even the URL itself. You need to know that DNS Rebinds exist and hence use libraries. The second takeaway is that SSRF actually hides behind really simple and innocent functionality. In this case, it's a company logo just saved out there. It's a URL that we fetch from somewhere, and we're not even aware that it could be used against us. So just be aware, those requests can be used against us. And lastly, and not less important, is that we should always assume that the attackers will find ways to get into localhost and internal network. In this case, the CRM users API doesn't have any authentication because we assume that if it's in the local network or even local host, nobody can access it but us because we have firewalls and we have all that. But here you see that with all the firewalls, I actually opened the door for attackers to get in. So we should always assume that attackers are in there.
Which comes back to how important is secure coding is. You can have all the firewalls, application firewalls. You can have so many layers of protection, but if your code is written without the understanding of security, then you're just opening up for trouble. And that's why we do this, right? We're showing that even when you try to patch your software, if you don't understand, and going back to this one, challenge 13, the issue was that the URL accepted localhost, right? If I remember correctly.
Yes.
So think about it. You do a pen test, they show you the finding, hey, you shouldn't allow localhost to be part of the URL. And then you say, okay, I'll fix it, but you don't understand the root cause of what you're doing. So you're just doing what you did in this challenge. You're patching it. You're just avoiding localhost. But then somebody smart comes along and creates this DNS binding. And again, so if you don't understand the security aspect of your code and how to write secure code, it will just hit you again and again and again if you just end up with patching. You have to write secure code from the get-go.
Exactly.
Cool. So guys, if you want to try this code, it's live. It's available under wizer-ctf.com. It's challenge number 24. You won't be able to get into the leaderboard because we just revealed the solution. It's not fair. However, you can try to solve it and it will show you if you succeeded or not. And if you need help, there is the CTF write-up, which will basically take you step by step. Here it is. It will take you step by step. You can read it. It doesn't show you the actual payload, but if you want a recap of what we spoke about today, this is sort of where you can get it. And then you can try to solve it yourself. Send this to your team. This is a great, this is a great exercise. And this is free, guys. Like the wizer-ctf.com it's the public version of our CTF platform. We have another one which is private for companies, and that's part of the Wizer platform. This one is public, it's free, and you should definitely give it a go. So with that said, Itzik, thank you very much. And we'll meet again next week for another CTF challenge.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.